Welcome back to the deep dive. I was walking through the living room the other day, and my nephew was watching.
Okay.
It was Saturday morning, bright colors, slapstick sound effects, the whole vibe.
Yeah, I know that vibe.
And for just a split second, I felt this wave of absolute nostalgia. You know that feeling?
Oh, totally. It's like the simpler times filter just kicks in.
Yes.
We all have it. It's that warm, fuzzy feeling that, everything was better when we were 10, and our biggest worry was whether Wile E. Coyote would finally catch the Roadrunner.
Exactly. Pure, safe, sugar cereal happy.
Yeah.
But then I actually stopped and listened, really listened to the dialogue coming from the TV, and I realized what I was watching was actually kind of horrifying. Yeah, it wasn't just cartoon violence like an anvil dropping on a head. It was emotional violence. It was a father telling his daughter she was worthless because she didn't win some contest. And the weirdest part, there was a laugh track.
And that is the exact moment the rose-colored glasses just shatter, isn't it?
Completely.
And that is exactly where we are living today in this deep dive. We are revisiting the shows that, basically raised us and the shows that are raising kids right now.
But we're stripping away the nostalgia to look at something very specific and pretty heavy, Parental.
And we aren't just looking for bad dads or the classic evil stepmothers in the Disney sense of the word.
No, this is more subtle.
Much more. We're digging into a really sharp critique from the analysis channel Not Fair, and the piece is titled How Not to Portray Abusive Parents in Cartoons.
And the core argument here is fascinating. It posits this theory that I hadn't really considered before, which is that there's a right way to show these dynamics and a very definite wrong.
It's such a critical distinction. The source argues that the right way involves validating the victim's pain. It means showing the real struggle of healing. Basically, the abuse itself is the villain of the story.
Okay, so the abuse is the conflict to be overcome.
Exactly. Whereas the wrong way is when the abuse is normalized, when it's used to, reset the status quo at the end of every episode.
Or worse.
Or worse, when the show actively teaches the audience to laugh at the victim, to see their pain as the punchline.
So it's the difference between telling a story about overcoming abuse versus, using abuse just to keep a story going.
You've hit it right on the head. And we have a massive lineup to get through today.
We really do. We're going to be talking about shows like Gravity Falls, Steven Universe, Avatar, The Last Airbender.
All shows the source holds up as doing it the right way.
And then on the flip side, we're going into Family Guy, The Fairly Odd Parents, and even Rick and Morty.
Yeah, it is quite the spectrum. And I think for a lot of you listening, this is going to recontextualize some very, very familiar scenes.
I think so, too. You might remember the jokes or the art style, but when you strip all that away and just look at the family dynamics through a psychological lens,
some of it is truly nightmare fuel.
It really is. So let's just dive right in. We're starting with the right way. The shows that actually get it. And honestly, this first example surprised me a little.
Oh, yeah.
Because on the surface, this show is just about, mysteries and monsters in the woods. We are talking about Gravity Falls.
A modern classic, absolutely. But according to our source material, one of the most realistic horrors in that show isn't a shapeshifter or a zombie.
No.
It's the Northwest family.
Yeah.
Specifically, the parents of Pacifica Northwest, a character named Preston and his wife Priscilla.
Right. Now, if you've seen the show, you know Pacifica. She starts out as this total archetype, the rich brat.
The Regina George of the middle school set, for sure.
Totally. She's mean. She's obsessed with status. She flaunts her money. It's so easy to just write her off as the antagonist for our hero.
And that's a classic trope in animation, isn't it? The rich, blonde, mean girl who exists solely to make our protagonist look better by comparison.
And usually that character is so one-dimensional.
Completely. They are mean because they are spoiled. End of story. There's no more depth. But Gravity Falls does something very subtle. It starts to peel back the curtain on why she is the way she is.
And it's not just affluence.
Not at all. The source points out that as the series goes on, we start to realize this isn't just her personality. This is a trauma response.
A trauma response. And her parents are described in the source as absolute maniacs.
Very fitting description.
But they don't hit her. They don't, lock her in a cupboard under the stairs. It's not that kind of obvious.
No, their method is much more insidious. It's psychological conditioning. There is this one specific detail the source highlights that I find absolutely bone-chillingly creepy.
You're talking about the bell.
The bell.
Oh, the bell, ding-a-ling.
Sounds so innocent, right? Like a little service bell you'd see at a hotel desk.
Yeah, totally harmless.
But you have to watch Pacifica's physical reaction in the show. When her parents ring that bell, she doesn't just stop talking. She freezes. Her whole body just locks up.
Yeah.
It's a somatic response,
right.
A physical manifestation of her fear.
The source describes this as Pavlovian conditioning, and I think that's spot on.
It's the perfect term for it.
For anyone listening who We skipped Psych 101. Can you just break that down for us? We usually talk about Pavlov with dogs, right?
Exactly. It's classical conditioning. The most famous experiment involved Ivan Pavlov ringing a bell right before feeding his dogs.
Okay.
Eventually, the dogs started to associate the sound of the bell with food, so they'd start salivating at just the sound of the bell, even if no food was present.
You're pairing a neutral stimulus, the bell, with a response.
Precisely. For Pacifica, that bell is no longer a neutral sound. It represents immediate, terrifying authority. It signifies that she has stepped out of line, that she has said or done something un-Northwest-like.
And the parents don't have to hit her. They don't even have to yell.
They don't have to do anything. They have conditioned her over years to completely suppress her own personality, her own thoughts, at the sound of a ding.
That is so much more insidious than a physical punishment.
It really is.
It implies years and years of training. It implies that she is seen less as a daughter and more as like a show dog or a prized pet.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It strips her of her humanity, of her autonomy. And the show frames this brilliantly.
How so?
Well, notice what happens when that bell rings. The upbeat music of the show just cuts out. The camera angles get weird. They get Dutch tilted and uncomfortable.
Feels wrong.
You're not supposed to laugh. The show is telling you, the viewer, to feel sick. It creates this visceral reaction in the audience where you immediately go, oh, something is very, very wrong here.
There's a specific instance the source really digs into. It's the mini golf war episode.
A fantastic example of this in action.
So Pacifica and Mabel are competing in a high-stakes game of mini golf.
Yeah.
And Pacifica's dad, Preston, gives her this pep talk that isn't really a pep talk at all.
No, it's a threat.
He leans in and he says, "You're a Northwest. Don't lose."
Let's just parse that sentence for a sec. He doesn't say do your best. He doesn't say have fun out there.
Not at all.
He ties her entire identity, you're a Northwest, to the outcome. Don't lose. The implication is crystal clear.
If you lose, you are no longer a Northwest. You are no longer one of us. You are no longer part of this family.
It is conditional love in its purest, most toxic form. Your belonging here is contingent on your performance.
Those are some high stakes for a game of mini golf.
Unbelievably high. And to make it even worse, to add this layer of neglect on top of the psychological pressure, they don't even stay to watch her play.
Right, they just leave.
That's the neglect aspect of it. They apply this crushing pressure, this threat of, don't you dare embarrass us, and then they just abandon her to deal with all that anxiety completely alone.
They basically say, we have a party to go to, we'll read about your victory in the paper.
It's so cold, and it teaches her a terrible lesson that love, if you could even call it that, is purely transactional. It's based on success. Her value as a human being is zero unless she is winning.
So this all sounds absolutely terrible for Pacifica. So let's get back to the main. Why does the source classify Gravity Falls as doing this the right?
Right. Good question.
Because if I'm a kid watching this, isn't it just depressing?
It absolutely would be if the show normalized it, if it was played for laughs, or if no one else noticed. But Gravity Falls does the opposite. It validates the horror.
How does it do that?
It uses the protagonist, Dipper, as the audience surrogate. Dipper is there. He witnesses this dynamic. He sees the absolute terror in Pacifica's eyes when her dad speaks to her.
And he's horrified.
He's horrified.
Yeah.
And that reaction is so crucial because it tells the kid watching at home, hey, this isn't normal. This is bad. You're feeling that this is weird and creepy. You are right to feel that way.
It gives the audience permission to see the abuse for what it is. And Pacifica gets an arc out of it. She doesn't just stay the brat forever.
No, she confronts it. She breaks free. But, and this is a really important nuance that the source highlights, it's not instant. It's not a switch she can just flip.
Right, it's a process.
It's a huge struggle. In the episode Northwest Mansion Mystery, she has this big moment where she has to choose between obeying her father or saving the townspeople from a ghost.
And she defies him. She lets the townspeople into their exclusive mansion party.
Which goes against everything she was ever taught. Her parents are literally standing there telling her not to. The bell is ringing, metaphorically.
And you can see the conflict on her face.
Oh, absolutely. The source points out that she doesn't just suddenly become a rebel. She is terrified. You can see her physically fighting against years and years of that bell ringing in her head. It is a physical struggle for her to finally disobey.
There's that great line she delivers after she does it. She says, "Our family name is broken and I'm going to fix it."
And that's the thesis statement of her entire arc. Right there. It's so powerful because it acknowledges the damage. She isn't pretending the past didn't happen.
She's not saying, my family is fine.
No, she's acknowledging the brokenness, and she is choosing to move forward and be better. The source calls this a proper handling of the topic because it respects the immense difficulty of the victim's journey.
It shows that it's hard to stand up to the people who control your entire life. especially when they've spent your entire life training you not to.
It's a roadmap. It shows that breaking the cycle is possible, but it's not easy, and that's okay.
It really. Okay, so moving from Gravity Falls, where the abuse is active and present, to another heavy hitter in modern anime, Steven Universe.
Oh, this one is complex. This is where we get into the right way to handle legacy trauma.
Because in Gravity Falls, the abusers are right there on screen ringing the bell. In Steven Universe, the quote-unquote abusive parent is dead before the first episode even starts.
We are talking about rose quartz,
yeah.
Or, as we later find out, pink diamond.
This is a fascinating case study in deconstruction.
Deconstruction of what exactly?
Of the dead mom trope.
Oh,
right.
Think about it.
Yeah.
Almost every Disney movie, every hero's journey, the dead mother is a saint. She's Bambi's mom. She was perfect. She's watching over our hero from the clouds. She's the pure motivation for everything good.
And Steven Universe absolutely starts there. Steven's mom, Rose Quartz, gave up her physical form.
A noble sacrifice.
And everyone tells him she was basically a goddess. Ideally compassionate, saved the entire earth, loved all living things. She's this ultimate benevolent mother figure.
Steven literally lives in her shadow. He has that giant smiling portrait of her hanging in the house, looking down on everything.
But then, as the seasons go on, the cracks start to appear in that perfect.
Massive cracks, huge fissures. We find out she lived a double life. She wasn't just a rebel leader. She was actually Pink Diamond, a member of the tyrannical space authority she was rebelling against.
So she was a dictator who faked her own death to start a rebellion against her own family.
And in doing so, she left a cataclysmic mess for everyone else to clean up thousands of years later.
The source is pretty harsh on her. It describes her as manipulative, selfish, and emotionally neglected, and it points to the tangible damage she left behind in the other characters.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Pearl. Pearl was Rose's servant, and then her terrifyingly loyal knight.
Her devotion is unhealthy.
Deeply unhealthy. The source argues Rose manipulated Pearl into this obsessive devotion that lasted for millennia. Pearl's entire identity was just wrapped up in serving Rose. She was groomed to be a servant soldier.
And she physically couldn't disobey a direct order if Rose used her diamond. That's a power imbalance you can't even quantify.
And then Rose just moves on. The source has a very colorful way of describing Rose's relationship with Steven's dad, Greg.
What's that?
It says she essentially dumped Pearl for a glorified SoundCloud rapper living in a van.
Wow, that is harsh.
It's harsh and it's funny, but it highlights the capriciousness of her actions. She played with people's lives like they were toys.
She got bored of being royalty, so she played rebel?
She got bored of that, so she played human with Greg. And through it all, she kept massive, world-altering secrets from her closest confidants.
And then there's Steven, the one left behind. He inherits all of this. He didn't start the war. He didn't shatter Pink Diamond, but he has to fix all.
The source talks about him having to apologize to space tyrants for things his mom did 5,000 years ago.
He is constantly cleaning up his mother's mess. This is the definition of parentification, isn't it?
It is the textbook definition. It's where the child has to take on the emotional responsibilities of the parent. Steven is the one acting like the adult, fixing the mistakes of a mother who is literally gone.
Talk about generational trauma.
It is the absolute definition of generational trauma. But what makes this the right way, according to the source, is that the show allows him to get angry about it.
That's the Storm in the Room episode, right?
Yes. This is such a pivotal moment in the series. Steven goes into his mother's magical room, which creates a manifestation of her based on his memory.
And he screams at her.
He lets it all out. All the frustration, the anger, the feeling of being abandoned. The source argued that Steven is completely 100% right to be angry. It validates that anger.
It tells the audience, even if your parent is dead, even if everyone tells you they were a saint, you are allowed to be furious at the mess they left.
That's such a hard thing for people to accept, I think. We have this cultural rule, this taboo, that you don't speak ill of the dead.
You're supposed to forgive and forget.
Exactly. And Steven Universe smashes that rule to pieces. It says, no, the impact matters more than the intent. Rose might have loved Steven in concept, but she left him with a war to fight and a legacy of lies.
The source makes a point of saying Rose wasn't physically, she was in her own way, loving and...
Right. And that's an important distinction. Abuse isn't always overt, but that kindness doesn't negate the manipulation or the profound emotion.
So what about the healing aspect? Because Steven goes through so much, he doesn't just yell at a cloud mom once and then feel better.
No, not at all. The source points out that healing in Steven Universe is messy and non-linear. Steven goes from this goofy, happy-go-lucky kid to a teenager who literally glows pink with unprocessed trauma.
He has severe breakdowns. He thinks he's a monster. He literally turns into a giant monster at one point because he can't process the stress and pain.
That line, I'm a monster, just it broke. But The show supports him through that. His family, his friends, they rally around him. It teaches you, the viewer, that you don't owe forgiveness just because someone gave birth to you.
You can set boundaries.
You can process that pain on your own timeline. It's a validation that trauma is messy and that recovery isn't a straight line, and that's okay.
It's incredible depth for a show about magical gems from space. It's treating the kids and its audience like they have real emotional intelligence.
It respects its audience.
Yeah.
That's the absolute.
Let's pivot to our third and final example of the right way in this one. Yeah. Well, there's no ambiguity here, no good intentions to debate.
Here under that.
We're talking about Avatar, The Last Airbender, and the fire.
The source refers to him as Jose at one point, which I have to assume is a funny little slip-up or inside joke in the transcript they were analyzing.
Right.
But yes, we are talking about Fire Lord Ozai, and he is presented as the prime example of pure, unrepentant malice. There are no redeeming qualities.
Yeah, he's not winning any father. And we have his two children, Zuko and Azula. The source argues they represent two different classic types of abuse victims find in the same.
This is a classic golden child versus scapegoat dynamic. It's textbook.
Let's start with Zuko.
Zuko is the one who gets the overt abuse. He's the one who is physically scarred by his own father in a duel. He's banished from his home.
He's given this impossible task to regain his honor.
He is told he is worthless.
Yeah.
He's told that his suffering will be his teacher. His abuse is loud, it's public, and it's undeniable. He is cast out.
And then you have his sister, Azula, the golden child. She's the prodigy, she's the favorite, she's perfect. So, is she really?
This is where the analysis gets so interesting. The source argues that Azula is just as damaged as Zuko, if not more so.
That be, she gets all the praise.
She was groomed. She wasn't raised. She was molded into a weapon for her father's ambitions.
So the praise she gets, conditional.
Completely conditional. Remember that line from Ozai? I love you, Azula, I do. But the subtext is always, always there. I love you because you are useful to me. I love you because you are strong. The moment you become weak, you become Zuko.
That's terrifying because it means she can never relax. She can never fail. She has to be perfect 204/7.
And that kind of pressure is unsustainable. It leads to her total mental breakdown at the end of the series. The moment she starts to lose control when her friends betray her, she completely unravels.
She hallucinates her mother. She cuts her own hair in this fit of rage and paranoia. She completely cracks.
Because you can't build a healthy psyche on a foundation of fear and conditional love. The source argues that Azula is a victim of Ozai just as much as Zuko is. Her scars are just on the inside.
Now, what I find really interesting is that the source praises the show for not redeeming the Fire Lord.
Yes, this is so important. In a lot of modern media, there is this urge to give the villain a sympathetic backstory.
A sob story. Oh, he's only bad because his dad was mean to him or something like that.
Exactly. But Avatar doesn't do that with Ozai. He's just a power-hungry bastard, to quote the source directly. There's no attempt to make you feel sorry for him.
And why is that important for the audience? Why is it better not to?
Because it validates the very real, very harsh reality that some people are just toxic. Some parents cannot be fixed. It's not the child's responsibility to heal their abuser.
Zuko realizes he cannot earn his father's love, and more importantly, he realizes
he has to find his own honor, his own path, separate from his father's approval. It teaches kids watching that sometimes the only winning move is to walk away. Sometimes you just have to defeat the monster and move on with your life.
That is a hard lesson, but a very necessary one for some peers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've seen the right way. Validating trauma, showing the struggle, not sugarcoating the toxicity. Now we have to look at the other side of the coin.
Now we go into the wrong way.
These are the shows that, according to our source, normalize abuse, they laugh at it, or they teach really, really dangerous lessons about family obligations.
And the source starts with a very heavy hitter, Family Guy.
The source calls Family Guy the poster child for being awful in this regard.
It does not pull its punch.
And specifically, we need to talk about Meg Griffin.
Poor Meg.
Yeah, poor Meg.
Yep.
She's the designated family punching bag. The source describes Peter and Lois as actual scum in how they treat her.
And it's hard to argue with that. Peter tells her to her face multiple times that he doesn't love her. Lois, her own mother, actively encourages the bullying and mocking. It is relentless.
Okay, I want to play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
We're moving to the wrong way list, and Family Guy is right at the top. But it's Family Guy. It's an adult comedy. The entire point of the show is that everyone is terrible, and we laugh at things we shouldn't.
Right.
Isn't critiquing the morality of Family Guy kind of missing the point of the whole show?
That is the common defense, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's satire, don't take it so seriously.
Yeah.
And, 99% of the time, I'd probably agree.
Right.
But the source argues that Family Guy does something different with Meg Griffin that crosses a line.
What line is that?
It crosses a line from just dark comedy into something more like grooming.
Grooming. Grooming the audience.
Grooming the audience to accept abuse as a necessary social function, to see it as normal. And you can see this perfectly in the episode Seahorse Seashell Party.
Oh, I remember this one.
This is the smoking gun that the source points to over and over again.
A hurricane hits. The family is trapped in the house together. And Meg finally snaps.
She does. She delivers this absolutely blistering monologue where she just tears into the entire family. She calls out Peter for being a drunken, neglectful father, Lois for being cruel and hypocritical, Chris for being a mindless follower.
She exposes all the dysfunction. For the first time, she stands up for herself.
And for a moment, you, the viewer, are thinking, finally.
Yeah.
Yes, good for Meg. You are cheering for her. We want her to win this.
But look at what happens next. And this is the core of the wrong way that the source is screaming about. Once Meg stops absorbing all the abuse, once she stops being the punching bag, what happens to the family?
The rest of them start turning on each other.
Exactly. Peter and Lois start fighting viciously. Chris breaks down. The entire family unit, which was held together by their shared hatred of Meg, begins to completely collapse. They don't have their lightning rod anymore.
They need a vessel to pour all their toxicity. And so, what does the show have Meg do? Does she leave? Does she find a better life?
No, she goes to Brian the dog and has this epiphany. She realizes that her role in the family is to be the punching bag. She decides that to save the family, she has to go back to letting them abuse her.
She apologizes to them for standing up for herself.
She apologizes to them. She goes back into the living room and says, I lied. I didn't mean any of it. She willingly accepts her role as the emotional toilet, as the source so aptly.
Wow, when you lay it out like that, that's not a joke. That's a tragedy.
It's a moral tragedy that is presented to the audience as a happy sitcom resolution.
And think about the lesson it teaches. It teaches the viewers, especially if they are the Meg of their own family, that it is their duty to be abused for the sake of family harmony.
It frames her suffering as noble. It frames the abuse as necessary for the family to function.
And over hundreds of episodes, the cruelty just becomes the punchline. We're trained as an audience to laugh when Peter farts in her face, or when they lock her in the car, or just forget she exists.
And that desensitizes. It tells kids watching and adults, hey, it's funny to treat the unpopular kid like garbage. This is just normal family dynamics. And that is an incredibly pernicious message. It validates the bully.
It really is. It's taking a victim and telling them, your pain doesn't matter as much as our convenience.
And unlike Gravity Falls, where we are supposed to be horrified by Pacifica's treatment, here we are supposed to be relieved that the abusive status quo is back in play.
Horrified.
Okay, next on the wrong list. This one might surprise people because it's a Nickelodeon classic, The Fairly Odd Parents.
This one is sneaky, I think, because the animation is so bright and manic and fast-paced.
Right, it feels harmless.
But the source points out that the entire premise of the show hinges on severe child neglect.
I mean, it's right there in the theme song. Timmy's an average kid that no one understands.
But it's so much worse than just not being understood. The source argues that Timmy Turner is so miserable, his life is so objectively awful, that the universe had to legally intervene and give him fairy godparents just to keep him from completely breaking.
Think about that for a second. The threshold for getting fairies is that your life is undeniably quantifiable.
And the source points directly to his parents as the main cause. They constantly leave him with Vicky, an evil, sadistic babysitter who literally tortures him for fun.
And they forget his name, or they forget they even have a son. There's a specific quote the source pulls that's just brutal.
That is it.
The parents are leaving and say, we're going to the movie. Not we as in all of us, we as in your mom and I. And then they just leave him there.
Ouch.
It's played for a quick laugh, but the underlying reality is just deep, profound neglect. And the source criticizes what it calls the sitcom problem, or the sitcom reset.
Which means what exactly?
It means the status quo is God. No matter what happens in an episode, no matter how much danger Timmy is in or how much his parents ignore him, by the start of the next episode, everything is reset.
The parents never learn. The neglect never stops. Vicky is never fired.
So there's no growth. There's no character development for the parents.
There can't. Because if the parents became better, more attentive people, Timmy wouldn't be miserable.
And if he's not miserable, he doesn't need fairies, and the show would have to end.
Exactly. So the show is trapped in this cycle where it has to trivialize the neglect just to keep the jokes and the premise running. It forces the audience to accept that Timmy's parents are just quirky and dim-witted, not dangerously negligent.
The source also brings up gaslighting.
Yes.
Yeah.
The show will occasionally try to have these little moments where the parents say, we love you, Timmy, but their actions immediately and consistently contradict their words.
The source quotes the dad barging into Timmy's room and saying, asserting my authority as a father by coming in anyway.
He completely ignores Timmy's privacy and boundaries. It treats the parents' incompetence as a funny personality trait rather than something that is actively and continuously harming their child.
It's interesting because you can contrast this with something like Harry Potter. The Dursleys are also abusive and neglectful, but they are clearly framed as villains.
And Harry eventually escapes.
Right. But Timmy is stuck. He has the fairies to cope, to get by, but he never escapes the fundamental problem: parents.
He is trapped in the dysfunction, and the show just treats it as a joke.
Yeah.
That's the core issue. We're laughing at a kid who is essentially an orphan with living parents.
All right, we have one more example for the wrong category, and this one is definitely more for the adults in the audience, but the source argues it's incredibly relevant to the culture of how we portray.
We're talking about Rick and Morty.
And the argument here is nihilism as swagger.
A perfect way to put it.
Rick Sanchez, he's a genius, a scientist, a raging alcoholic, and a grandfather. He's the guy every edgelord on the internet wants.
And, as the source is very clear on, an abuser. Textbook emotional abuse. He drags his grandson Morty into constant life-threatening danger. He belittles him. He calls him stupid. He is always drunk.
There's that scene where Morty says, "I didn't know hanging out with you was making me smarter."
And what does Rick say?
Full disclosure, Morty, it's not.
He just constantly tears down Morty's self-esteem. But the issue here isn't just that Rick is a bad person. It's how the show frames his badness. The source argues the show uses Rick's nihilism, his belief that nothing matters because there are infinite universes, to justify his horrible behavior.
Because if nothing matters, then being cruel to your grandson doesn't matter either.
Right. And because Rick is a genius, the quote-unquote smartest man in the universe, the show often rewards him to this behavior. He's the GOAT. The audience is encouraged to think he's cool because he doesn't care. It equates intelligence with cruelty.
But it's not just Rick, is it? The source goes into the generational trauma with his daughter, Beth.
Absolutely. Beth's story is key. The source points to the episode, The ABCs of Beth, where we see that her toxic parenting, her emotional detachment from her own kids, stems directly from the way she was raised by Rick.
And Rick refuses to apologize for it. He says, "You think you deserve an apology."
He genuinely believes he's above basic human decency because he can build a portal gun.
Yeah.
And the show, it sometimes critiques this, but more often than not, it just kind of shrugs and moves on.
And then you have Beth and her husband, Jerry. The source calls them a natural disaster.
A perfect description. They use their children, Summer and Morty, as emotional support animals for their own failing marriage.
That's a great phrase.
It is. They were so busy fighting and being dysfunctional that the kids are constantly forced to mediate or pick a side. And there's compelling evidence in the show that they are bad for the kids.
What evidence is that?
When they got divorced in season 3, the source notes that Summer and Morty were noticeably happy. They were more independent, functional.
But they got back.
They did. And the dysfunction immediately returned. The source argues that Rick and Morty is a show that's smart enough to know this relationship is toxic, but it's not brave enough to fully commit to addressing it.
It keeps them together for the sitcom status quo.
It keeps Rick abusive because that's the brand. That's the character people tune in for.
So it celebrates the toxicity.
In many ways, yes. It admits Rick is abusive. He's very self-aware about it. But it implies that abuse is just the cost of genius, that it's acceptable because he saves the world sometimes. It's a very cynical, very bleak take on family.
So we've looked at the whole spectrum here. We have Gravity Falls and Steven Universe acknowledging the pain and showing the hard, messy work of healing.
We have Avatar showing that sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is cut ties with a toxic parent.
And then we have Family Guy, Fairly Odd Parents, and Rick and Morty using abuse as a plot device, a running gag, or a justification for being cool.
What really stands out to me when you lay it all out like that is the message that's being sent to you, the viewer.
Right.
In the right shows, the viewer who might be in a bad situation is validated. If you are a kid living in a home like Pacifica's, Gravity Falls is telling you, this is wrong. What's happening to you is not okay, and you can escape.
And on the other hand, Family Guy is telling the kid living in a home like Meg's, this is your job. You have to suck it up so mom and dad don't fight.
That is a devastating difference. One empowers the child, the other grooms them to accept abuse as their lot in life.
It really makes you wonder about the long-term impact of these so-called jokes.
Absolutely. The source asks a really provocative question at the end. If media trains us to laugh at the Megs of the world, are we becoming complicit in that dynamic in real life?
Are we becoming the ones laughing while the bell rings for some...
Exactly. When we watch The Fairly Odd Parents and we laugh at Timmy's parents forgetting he exists, we are participating in the trivialization of that neglect.
It really makes you rethink what we consume as harmless.
It does. And I think the big takeaway here isn't that we can never have dark humor or flawed characters. Of course we can. But there is a responsibility in storytelling. If you are going to show abuse, you have to acknowledge the weight of it. You can't just hit the reset button at the end of the episode.
Because real life doesn't have a reset button. Trauma doesn't just disappear when the credits roll.
No, it doesn't. And as Steven Universe shows so beautifully, the trauma lasts. It makes you glow pink. It stays with. And treating that profound pain like a joke does a massive disservice service to everyone watching, especially the ones who might see themselves in these characters.
Well, on that note, we have certainly given you a lot to think about next time you turn on the TV. Whether it's a little bell ringing in Gravity Falls or a talking dog in Family Guy, maybe pay a little more attention to who is laughing and who is hurting.
And ask yourself, is this story asking me to care about the victim, or is it asking me to laugh at them?
That's the question. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.